Live from Hollywood, it's Harrison.
We sure are in L.A. 4 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. Welcome and happy Monday for those of you for whom there's happiness. More will be revealed as the adult supervision in the halls of Congress on Capitol Hill decide whether or not to pull off the practical joke, the hoodwinkery, the pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, the real plot of the play, and the pot that is being smoked. And we're going to get into what the real plot of the play is here today on Go Harrison. We're also going to have a wonderful conversation with a man who is totally familiar to you, has been for many years, at least 10 years, one of the pioneers of progressive talk, to be sure, one of the originators of progressive talk on satellite radio all the way into a truly hit online TV show called the Young Turks. Oh, did I spill the beans? Yes. And then, of course, a major voice on Msnbc for quite a long time. He's stepped away from that right now, or they've stepped away from him, or they've mutually stepped apart from each other. We're going to find out what the, we're probably going to confirm what you probably thought about corporate media at large and just how far the threshold of credibility, of truth-telling, of being prickly and pushing the man behind the curtain out from behind the curtain, how long you can get away with that. And again, more will be revealed. Quite clearly, the top story right now is the debt ceiling. What does that mean? You know, under Ronald Reagan, it was raised, 18 times. Under Bush, another 7, about 100 times in the last number of years. Not a big deal. But if at the end of the game, you simply want to privatize Earth, and remember, the United States, for the tapped market that it is, still has some assets left, and now's a good time just to transfer the rest of the last 8.3 cents up to the very top. And how does that work? We're going to get into that, but first, let me just point out a programming note. Coming up in about a half hour, we're going to be talking to a man named Simon Martinson. He's from Norway, and he's going to talk about some of the psychology of what goes on there. We tend now to imagine there is rampant xenophobia. There really isn't, and one of the reasons the cops showed up so late at the scene of the crime was because they simply don't carry guns. They don't believe in shooting each other. They don't believe in shooting the citizenry, so it took them a lot longer to go fetch guns to show up at the crime. How does that all work from his perspective? So that's coming up in about a half hour. But without further ado, I want to reintroduce a man who really needs no introduction. I speak in cliches because they really fit sometimes. You need no introduction. Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks. Welcome to Go Harrison.
Great to be here, and it's great to talk to you. We're old friends. It's been a long time.
I owe you a great thank you for many things, not only for you standing up for the humans on our little rotating orb here for as many years as you have had to do, and for all the discomfort that you've been willing to bear over time. It's not easy trying to tell the truth because some people don't like that.
As it turns out.
Your tone, right? That's what we're looking. So tell us what happened. Here you were on every day on MSNBC. We all got to watch you, and then poof, we get the Reverend Al Sharpton. We're now putting on a preacher. Let's just call it what it is. He's a cleric. No matter what we think of his, we've now put on a preacher. So what happened?
Well, I'm going to leave the Al Sharpton stuff aside because one could argue if he's a cleric, but that's a whole other issue. All right, and one can argue if that's a good or a bad thing. So, well, you know, I was on MSNBC for some time, as you mentioned, and about 3 months ago in April, they pulled me in and said, hey, Cenk, as you're hosting the 6 o'clock show here for us, we've gotten some people in Washington who are saying they are uncomfortable with your tone. They are concerned with your tone. And, you know, the president of MSNBC said, you know, we'd love to be outsiders. They're cool. They wear leather jackets. They ride motorcycles, which I didn't realize was the case. I've never ridden a motorcycle.
That's a deal maker. I have a scooter.
Maybe that was the problem.
Right, yeah. I mean, the only cycle I've ridden is a bicycle that was, you know, my old Schwinn, I believe it was, from a long time ago.
That was the tone that was concerning them.
Right. And he said, but we're not outsiders, we're insiders, and this is the establishment. And the message that I got loud and clear was, start acting like it, which is to not question the establishment. I had absolutely no intent of doing that, so I continued my program exactly as I was doing it before. And in fact, in April, May, and June, I had my best ratings ever. Every month it got better, and we beat MSNBC from 6 o'clock last year, which they were incredibly happy about because Ed Schultz, who had that
Fox,
beating
CNN,
beating CNN by a long shot, even beat Fox the week before I got the message in 18-34, which is very, very rare for MSNBC.
Well, and I would think that would be a tone that would concern them in the right ways. Like, look, it's working. Look, it's winning. Look, he's speaking the voice of the people. That perhaps is the right tone. But at the end of the day, the corporate master, General Electric, the largest weapons contractor on Earth, 104 nuclear power plants in U.S. soil, many of the beautiful components that broke down in Fukushima are General Electric made. I remember doing a story 10 years ago on how they would rate a switch in a nuclear power plant to last 5 years, and after 5 years you simply re-rate it, and now it's a 15-year switch as the Bakelite cracks apart and the old stuff that pre-plastic starts to chip away, but that's okay. And when you get close to that, when you start to massage the nubbins and sand the osteophytes of BS, people do tend to kick back.
And I did stories on that. Not just the GE parts in the plants, which is a good story, but we also touched on how GE does not pay corporate taxes and how they do tax avoidance. I also talked about net neutrality and how Comcast was on the wrong side of that.
Comcast that owns MSNBC, by the way.
That's right.
That would be the Comcast.
Yes, that Comcast.
Yes.
So, as I recount those stories, you begin to understand why we parted ways. So, look, for those of you in your audience who don't know the full story, then they came to me and said, look, you did great, but we're not going to give you 6 o'clock. I took that to mean, hey, I didn't play ball. And they gave me a very lucrative offer for the weekends and for also for a contributor role. And I said, no, thank you. I don't want to do this, right? Because I sense that I obviously couldn't tell this story if I stayed internal at MSNBC. And I think people need to know what you're getting when you turn on television, right? And when you turn on the mainstream media. They have a lot of factors, whether it's corporate factors, political factors. They take access into account, want to keep the politicians happy, so they keep coming back on their shows. You got to know that. So what you're getting is not necessarily geared towards the audience. It's geared towards power. And so be wary of what you're watching and what you're listening.
11 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. You are watching Go Harrison through GoHarrison.com. We're streaming live on Ustream. It will be available tomorrow throughout DirecTV and Dish networks as well. You can also listen naturally, simultaneously on our beautiful expanded FM signal. KPFK now the strongest FM west of the Mississippi, pounding down to Tijuana, going out and really, really improving the tans in Palm Springs, all the way up to Santa Barbara, where a glass of Merlot tastes all the better with FM stereo surrounding it. We're talking to Cenk Uygur. Cenk, you know from the Young Turks, youngturks.com, theyoungturks.com, recent MSNBC host, and is talking about why the division, why the split, why the departure from MSNBC. And I met Cenk probably about 8 or 9 years ago when I helped launch a channel on Sirius Satellite Radio, the gay channel called OutQ that nobody's ever heard of now, which is too bad. But anyway, it was a lot of hard work.
You did your part.
I did my part, did mornings there for a year. And Cenk offered us his studio, so I got a chance to meet him and really learn, actually watch somebody do progressive stuff before it was really popular. There was no Air America yet. There was no Rachel Maddow, somebody who we both know. There was none of this. There was none of this. There was you. There was a guy named Mike Malloy yelling, "God damn it!" And all of this going on, and that was it. Right. But you were offering a voice of sanity amidst this. You're an attorney, right?
Yes.
You know how to actually talk. You understand what rhetoric is. I mean, this is a good teaching instrument for the rest of us.
In a sense, we were roommates, Harrison.
Yeah.
So that's fun. And yeah, back then, no Air America, no nationwide show for Ed Schultz, Randy Rhoads, or anyone else. We used to call ourselves the first liberal talk show nationwide because we were the first original talk show for Sirius Satellite Radio back in 2002, and we've been at it ever since. I think, to be fair, Democracy Now! Was around at the time, so I think
True.
I think we were second, to be honest. We didn't realize that when we were calling ourselves that, but anyway, we've been doing this a long time, and I remember we used to get the emails from all the red states. From Kansas, North Carolina, South Dakota, and they'd always say the same thing. I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one, right? And then we heard you, and it was like a voice in the wilderness. And apparently that started to resonate. And what I'd been saying forever is, hey, listen, we got conservative radio, we've got obviously conservatives on television, Fox News, etc. If you give them an alternative, it's not just the right thing to do for the country, for our democracy, etc. It's also the right business model. And eventually, Air America thought, hey, maybe they're right and they invested a lot of money. As it turned out, their management was horrible, but their shows were actually incredibly successful, market by market. And then out of Air America, you got Rachel Maddow, you got Senator Al Franken. You partly got us. We were there before, but we wound up being their morning show for a while. Tom Hartman's a great radio host throughout the country now, and the list goes on, right? And then when Keith Olbermann started becoming progressive on MSNBC, or he was progressive, he just voiced it, all of a sudden the ratings took off. They're like, oh my God, it turns out at least 50% of the country is progressive. To which I said, of course! That's what we've been telling you that for years.
Right, well, the founding daddies hated all of this sort of centralized power. They hated monopolies, all the things the Tea Party is telling us are wonderful, good, and nourishing for us. So we'll talk about some messaging in just a moment. It's 15 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you. You're listening to Go Harrison on KPFK, 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. You can see Cenk Uygur right now if you go to goharrison.com, one word, goharrison.com. We are streaming live on Ustream and, of course, live everywhere else through kpfk.org. And one of the things, and I'm looking at a bunch of tweets here on Facebook, our keyword is Go Harrison if you have questions for Cenk. One of the things they're asking is, what's next, Cenk? What's next? Because your franchise of Young Turks is successful, and before you answer what's next, Mildred in Ohio, I'm making up this name, what's a Young Turk as opposed to an old Turk?
Well, Young Turks means young progressives looking to overthrow the established system. And that's why we picked the name back in 2002. And boy, has that fit, right? And it certainly fit during the Bush years, but unfortunately, it also fits during the Obama years, as we've seen one disastrous cave-in after another to the Republicans. And the establishment is really strong. They sign the paychecks, and we got to fight against that. So I'm really proud of the name that we chose, and it has nothing to do with age or ethnicity. And
you happen to be Turkish, am I correct?
I happen to be Turkish, and I happen to be young at some point in my life. but as far as, of course, citizenship, I'm American, and I'm at best middle age at this point. So,
well, you hold it well.
You do.
And I guess I am too. So I think we both get an A+. Right.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Mercy Malik.
I read that one of the objections raised by MSNBC was to your body language. And I just have to say, sitting here in the studio, I haven't seen you make any obscene gestures or anything of that nature. Can you elaborate on that? Did they ever provide any sort of specificity in that complaint?
Right. There was actually two separate things there. And that's a great question, because we did initially have a separate conversation, because I was on there for a while, about maybe 6-7 months ago, have a conversation about body language, right? And I'm an excited guy, and sometimes I'll gesticulate with my arms, etc. But not that often, and not any more often than perhaps Ed Schultz would, and he does a great show on MSNBC. But they were concerned. They want everybody buttoned down, right? And I remember my favorite thing was they said, try to act like a senator. Oh. And I thought, why?
What, steal?
Take some
what do you
bribes.
mean?
Right, that's a huge problem right there. And second of all, senators are intensely dull. So, why would a talk show act like a senator? But then later, they pretended that conversation was the same conversation we had about being part of the establishment. They said, by Washington, we meant your producers in Washington who are worried about your body language. Oh, really? You give me a huge speech on insiders, outsiders, and people in Washington are concerned about your tone when you meant my booker thought I moved my arms too much?
Wow.
No, that is not how it went down.
It's kind of interesting. We're talking to Cenk Uygur, by the way, former MSNBC host, who's telling us what went on there. The whole body language thing, it's kind of like Anthony Weiner or any of this stuff.
That's language of a different
you have
sort.
David, and it's spelled the same way. You
Yes.
have David Vitter. You have all these guys texting prostitutes from the floor of the House. Right there. Excuse me. I've got a young chickadee coming for lunch. I have to leave now. Weiner is doing the same thing. Why is he pilloried? Why is he worse? Because he's a liberal. And it's proof again that these liberals, these renegade people do awful, terrible things. When a conservative or a Christian does it, it's a slip. we understand. He's living a fierce, hard life in service of the Lord or whatever, and he had a slip. But the other ones, he's just showing who he really is. And because you wear suits, and Ed Schultz puts on a suit, but he's a meat and potatoes. He shoots mooses, right? So to ask him to act like a senator would be contrary to his natural essence. But you have a more business look. So you're different. You're different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question, and we've talked about that a lot on the Young Turks as to why you get the different standard between conservatives and liberals. And certainly the part of it is they say, well, look, Jesus understands that we're all humans and there's redemption, etc., but that's only for people who ran on family values and are the world's largest hypocrites. But if you're not a hypocrite and, you never made your family a part of the conversation politically, well, they say, well, look, I'm sorry, Jesus has no redemption for you. And,
wow.
You tweeted out. By the way, Wiener was not with a prostitute, did not break any laws,
Right.
unlike Vitter. And Vitter, when he came back to the Republican caucus, got literally a standing ovation from these family values guys. Look, part of it is, if you go after power, there are consequences. My favorite example is Elliot Spitzer, right? Elliot Spitzer got turned in by his own bank for what, $5,000, $9,000 transactions? At the same time, Wells Fargo missed $364 billion worth of laundered money from Mexico, which was drug money. Whoops, we missed $364 billion, but Elliot Spitzer, who was attacking the banks, we caught his $9,000 going to the prostitutes. Please.
And the
Thank
timing was
God.
purely coincidental.
Yeah, total coincidence. I'm
Coming
sure.
up in just a couple of minutes as we continue to talk with former MSNBC host Cenk Uygur, who still is on the Young Turks, theyoungturks.com, pretty much daily. Are you still daily?
Absolutely, daily. And we're also the largest news show on YouTube, so if you go to youtube.com/theyoungturks, you'll get all of our videos broken down in 2 5-minute segments. It's really convenient.
Or just Google CENK. It's really simple. You're the only thing that comes up. Congratulations. We're going to find out what his future is and also look deeper into corporate media and what is the threshold now that we recognize where we can basically get away with a bit of truth-telling. But first, a little traffic with Jeff Thomas.
Go Harrison. Completely unsponsored common sense commuter traffic.
It is 21 minutes past the hour. This is your Go Harrison live and local traffic report on KPFK. Let's start now in South LA on the 110 North. Traffic is slow from Adams to the 5 freeway. Eastbound lanes are also slow from Vermont to the 110. In Hollywood on the 101 South, it is busy from Highland Boulevard clear down to the 5 freeway. And in the Sepulveda Pass on the 405 South, traffic is slow from the 101 to Skirball Center Drive due to an earlier crash. And finally, in La Mirada, the 5 North is slow from Valley View to the 605, and again from Atlantic to the 110. The 710 looks like a better alternate if you're heading into Los Angeles. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, keyword Go Harrison. For Harrison, I'm Jeffrey Thomas on KPFK 90.7 FM, Los Angeles, 98.7 FM, Santa Barbara.
Live from Hollywood, it's Harrison. Go Harrison.
Don't be left out by the media. Become the media.
All through the week, you witness it, you think about it, you have no place to put it.
You stupid liberal!
Simply call 310-737-TALK. Introducing the Harrison Hotline Rant Line.
A message for his show.
That's Los Angeles, 310-737-TALK. It's our Harrison Hotline Rant Line, free for you.
Uncle Harry, no cow. After your little segment there on meat, I don't even want to eat chicken. I'm going to wither away. All right, have a good night.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can now purge your pithy perceptions with plosive prophylaxis.
Harrison, I don't know you and you don't know me. They are the words of God.
It's our Harrison Hotline Rant Line, free for you, and for you to use freely anytime. Please remember to keep it clean and tidy for your fellow listeners. That's the 24/7 Harrison Hotline Rant Line for you at 310-737-TALK.
Hi, this is Senator Barbara Boxer, and I have to say that listening to Harrison makes my day.
Captioning for Harrison is made possible by a generous grant from the Christian Coalition.
Go Harrison.
Yea, in the name of Jesus. Woo! Hallelujah.
It is 24 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. You are listening to Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. Streaming live on kpfk.org. Also, you can watch us and our guests here. Cenk Uygur, former MSNBC host and current host, of course, continuing, ongoing on the Young Turks, the largest news organ on YouTube, simply by going to goharrison.com, one word, goharrison.com, and watch in the full mayhem of living color. It's almost Technicolor. It's technical, but it's not quite Technicolor, but it's a close shake. We're also going to be talking to Simone Martinson in just a few minutes. He's Norwegian and is going to talk about what went on there and the notion of xenophobia and the notion of Muslimism and all the rest of it. Where do they all stand and why they're deciding to increase democracy as a result of the shootings rather than create a nice Patriot Act or a enabling act, as the Germans did in World War II, to compress democracy. For every action, there's an equal and opposing reaction. Their reaction is to make it more open so that people don't get all crazy and bottled up and act out. In other words, if you don't allow a pressure cooker, it doesn't go boom. That's their theory anyway. And, of course, their houses don't catch fire because they're very smart and use prophylactic building supplies. We're talking to Cenk Uygur. Cenk, former MSNBC host, and I'm getting lots of tweets here, and everyone wants to know what's next, what's next.
Well, we are definitely talking to some people in the media. Some are on TV and some are online. And there might be some good news soon, but, we're not quite ready for that yet. But what I always tell people is that if all we did from now on is the Young Turks, we'd be in great shape because, for example, in July we went over 30 million views on YouTube alone. We're over 500 million views for our channel there.
That's
over
B,
5,000.
billion with a B?
Yes.
The way, like the debt ceiling, billion with a B.
That's right. 500 million. And we're, right now we get over 1 million views a day, which means that we are larger than any show on MSNBC or CNN. So, we're in pretty good shape. And we get very good revenues from it too. So thank God. Knock on wood.
Well, and that is wood, by the way.
Yes.
That was good. That was good. He actually knocked on real wood, which is how we like to do it here on Go Harrison. The other thing would be corporate media. Now, we've all talked forever, ad nauseum, about to what degree can you get away with it. On Air America, you could really get away with pretty much saying it as it is. Television is different. On radio, you can't say the word poo-poo. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I
do. You cannot. But on TV, you can, right? So you can get away with a whole lot more, maybe in cursing or in colorful metaphors, but content-wise, you can't. Whereas on radio, you can have much richer, more probing content, but the language is reeled back in. Curious, huh?
Well, all of that makes absolutely no sense, given that kids can get online much easier and are much more familiar with that than going and turning to an AM station or an FM station or turning on their TV even. And online, you can see anything. You can see donkeys. Okay, so there's this complete lack of logic.
Is that what that is?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
So there's this complete lack of logic in how we apply the rules. But, more importantly, substantively, look, we have a major corporation as our partner on the Young Turks. It's called Google, because Google owns YouTube, and we have this partnership. We're one of the top partners at YouTube, right? But it is possible to have a corporation that gives you independence. Google has given us complete independence. And so we can say anything we want, including against Google. In fact, we've done stories about how Google avoids taxes, right? So,
but they build windmills.
They
to offset their tax avoidance.
And look, there's good, and I always talk about this. Corporations are not evil. They're amoral. They are designed not to have morals, not to care about morals. They're profit-making machines. They are soulless machines, right? So it's not that GE or Comcast are bad people. They're not people at all, right?
Well, according to Citizens United, they're bigger people than you and me.
I know, but that's why we're going to pass an amendment taking away corporate personhood.
Yes.
Okay, so that's our number one objective. Until we do that, we lose on all other issues. We're going to get some exciting news about that hopefully soon as well. We're going to start to really fight back against that concept. But for now, the owners of Google are still, or the people who run Google are still their founders. And from what we can tell, they're good guys, and they really enforce that throughout the company. So it gives us an independent voice. And online, even if you're not with Google, obviously online is so large, you can go have an independent voice anywhere. And it's just it allows for real freedom as opposed to the gatekeeper quasi-freedom that you have in radio and TV.
Yeah, it's curious as we talk to Cenk Uygur, former MSNBC host and current host, daily host of the Young Turks, 500 million with a B, hits constantly, loved and cherished, relished wildly by the YouTube corporation, because he's delivering a progressive message. Imagine, you are proof positive. You are the template for how progressive voice is real. You're not showing the donkey videos, by the way, because I've watched you. I've never seen a donkey video, and yet 500 million. And this is really important to note, right? That and your content awfully is awfully. I'm using that as an adverb. Awfully often. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here, but it's dynamic and didactic at times. It's not necessarily filled with humor. It's not necessarily filled with color. It's filled with fact. And that draws that volume of eyes. That speaks to a certain appetite that's being fed. Not an appetite that has a prurient interest, but an appetite that's simply looking to survive. Out of 307 million Americans, they know that there's a place they can go online and get unvarnished facts.
I think you hit it. Look, we have the whole range, right? So we do serious news, we do some cultural news, we do whatever the audience is interested in. And we do some lighthearted stuff and we do some serious stuff. And my dad complains. He says, well, why you're not as funny as Stephen Colbert? I said, I don't know why. It's your fault. You gave me the genes. I don't know why I'm not as funny as Stephen Colbert. But Harrison, I think the reason that all those people come is because they can smell honesty from a mile away, right? We don't have a monopoly on the truth, but they get a sense that we're honest with our audience. And they're so tired of the fakeness that you get in the mainstream media. All those people are not news anchors. So many of them are not news anchors. They're news actors, and people can tell, right?
Yep.
And so when you deliver an honest story and they see you doing it and they see that you back it up with facts, they go, okay, I get it. This is it. And that's why they just keep coming back.
Young Turk host, founder, progenitor of all things truthful. Do you like the over-the-top? Yes, it's pretty
God
good.
Bless.
Pretty good.
Keep going.
We're all about hyperbole on this show.
Yes, all about it. We're talking to Cenk Uygur, former MSNBC host, and we're going to continue with him and talk about the nature of corporate media, where he's going and what his plan is, and what he has seen and what he imagines it will look like down the road. Key thing for all of us as we still fight for net neutrality, as we still hope that companies like Comcast and Rogers up in Canada, and there's a company down in Dallas who have already taken cable systems and closed them off. In other words, you put in certain search words and they simply will not appear. Much as AOL used to be, a very limited environment, this is the ultimate plan down the road, and we are all fighting for this capability to be able to pass recipes back and forth through Mr. Bush's internets without having somebody catch it along the way. First, a little news with Mercy Malik.
Harrison. From Washington prowlers to corporate crawlers. News update. Your double grind of headlines.
Go Harrison. News time is 32 minutes past the hour, and I'm Mercy Malik with your reality check. A group of clergy members walked their talk on Capitol Hill last week in an act of passive civil disobedience meant to draw attention to the plight of the needy during budget negotiations. The Huffington Post reports that several Christian ministers, one rabbi, and other religious lay people were arrested by Capitol Hill police for the crime of demonstrating in the U.S. Capitol. On the same day, 70...
Demonstrating what?
Demonstrating the truth, Harrison. On the same day, you're going to like this part, 70 Catholic clergy and theologians sent a letter to Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner urging him to, quote, heed to the consistent moral calls from Catholics and protect the most vulnerable, end quote, by not cutting social programs and aid to the needy. Reverend Michael Livingston, one of the clergy arrested at the demonstration, said, quote, our elected officials are protecting corporations and wealthy individuals while shredding the safety net for millions of the most vulnerable people in our nation and abroad. Our faith won't allow us to passively watch this travesty unfold. Today we offer our bodies as a living sacrifice to say to Congress, raise revenue, protect the vulnerable, and those living in poverty. It's 33 minutes past the hour. Japanese activists rallied yesterday in the capital of the Fukushima region, home to Japan's crippled nuclear power plant, calling for a complete end to atomic energy. The rally, joined by residents evacuated from areas around the plant, was organized by the Japan Congress Against Atomic and Hydrogen Bombs as part of its longtime campaign against nuclear weapons. It was the first time a leading anti-nuclear organization staged a rally in Fukushima to observe the anniversaries of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and 9th, 1945. In the 1950s, a partnership between the U.S. government and U.S. corporations successfully pressured Japan to adopt atomic power. On March 11th of this year, the world's first victims of atomic weapons became the latest victims of nuclear energy. Nirohasa Yoshida, a schoolteacher who was evacuated from a town 12 miles from the plant, told the rally, quote, "Let us become the last victims of any nuclear plant accident." It's 34 minutes past the hour. And finally, the inaugural installment of exciting and possibly odd developments in green technology. Our very first acknowledgement goes to Dutch footwear manufacturer Oat Shoes, which, despite the name, has nothing whatsoever to do with hot breakfast cereals. Oat Shoes is instead the proud creator of what appears to be the world's first line of entirely biodegradable and fashionable sneakers, which sprout into flowers upon decomposition. Shocking, and yet it's true. Jeff Thomas. According to product info on the company's official website, the cotton and hemp portions of the footwear degrade within a few months, with even the plastic components designed to break down in roughly 6 months. The manufacturer notes, however, that you should additionally enjoy, quote, "a fiery bouquet of wildflowers growing out of your shoes within days," end quote. The website assures wearers that planting is required to begin the growing process, lest one fear the shoes sprouting whilst on one's feet. Sadly, Oat Shoes are currently only available in Europe, but you can read about them on the company's English language website, oatshoes.com. Congratulations, Oat Shoes. You are our exciting and possibly odd development in green technology for the week. For Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 Los Angeles, 98.7 Santa Barbara, 93.7 San Diego, and 99.5 Ridgecrest, China Lake, I'm Mercy Malik. You can be my friend on Facebook and send me news tips for your reality check.
News update. Harrison.
It is 36 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. You are listening to Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California, streaming live everywhere, and of course video streaming as well. You can watch us right now simply by going to goharrison.com, one word, goharrison.com, and catch the archives of this program anywhere, anytime, also through goharrison.com or kpfk.org. We're talking to Cenk Uygur. Cenk is the, by the way, I didn't point out, this, our solar studio in West Hollywood, where we're live from right now, used to be Marilyn Monroe's apartment.
No.
This used to be Marilyn Monroe's apartment.
No.
Why didn't I know that?
Because this building, it's an ancient building. I'm not going to give the address, but
Don't do it.
right up the street, and Cenk will like this too. Marilyn Monroe lived here because in this building, the other buildings weren't around yet. So the stars would live here and then go shoot for 4 or 5 months, come back, and you could see in there was a Murphy bed, which is now where the bookshelves are.
Wow.
Well, she lived here, and then she would trundle up the street to the corner, and there's another big old building and a modern building. The modern building next to the big old building used to be Judy Garland's house, and it was torn down. Somebody took some cash, stupidly or smartly, and put a modern building there. But the old big one that looks castle-like, JFK kept an apartment in there.
No.
And once a month would fly in and take the black limo and it'd do the underground parking, and she would walk up the sidewalk, a whole block, and interfrasticate with JFK overnight, and then come back in her torn slippers in the morning and sequester herself back into her little nook here.
So we go from you and I being roommates to Marilyn Monroe and JFK sharing a room.
Upgrade. That's when you come on this show, it's always an upgrade.
And Harrison's building was that era's equivalent of the Oakwood Apartments, apparently.
In a way, yes. In a way. It's so I just wanted to let you know that you've got a good vibe in here. That Marilyn may be tickling your frenulum if you're not paying attention. You never know.
I would enjoy that.
I know that.
Who would turn it down?
We're talking to Cenk Uygur. Cenk famously is the host of the Young Turks, really the longest progressive talk radio program in America today. And when I say longest, I mean continuous, I mean successful, I mean the widest reach, uninterrupted. He recently spent nearly a year on MSNBC doing afternoons and had a bit of collision with the management. His tone, as we're told by certain people in the federal government, his tone, which has nothing to do with hand gesticulations or twirling on a finger, but his tone. And let's rediscover again what your tone was so that we can understand what our tone shouldn't be if we don't want to be disappeared in the public eye.
It's a good question. You know, I went after a bunch of people, and my guess is at least several of those upset management based on the conversations that we had there. One is that I went after President Obama. I don't believe he's a real progressive, and I think that we've seen, unfortunately, me be that I was proven correct about that, especially with the latest debt ceiling deal. Yet another 100% collapse on that. I went after Democrats in general, but I also went after all of Washington and the politicians. And I said, look, I think they're fundamentally corrupt, not because they're bad guys, but we have the wrong system. They take paychecks from corporations and they work for the people who sign their paychecks. And so, and I remember saying on air, I think 90% of the politicians we have are corrupt. And I think that was a tone that they did not like because they wanted those politicians back on their shows, and they worked with those politicians, and that's part and parcel of what's wrong with this system.
Well, it's interesting, Cenk, because other people probably say the same thing. But again, because you are quite clearly a real progressive, I mean, you care about humans. You spent your life developing this. And so when you say it, it has more impact than if somebody who's playing the role of a presenter says it. It's what you expect them to say. But yours is really sincere. Also, there's thoughtful analysis backing it up. I think that's the tone, the thoughtful analysis. Right?
My bad.
You're bad, right?
Wow, that was a mistake.
So I just want to thank you so much for joining us here today on KPFK and for giving us the skinny on how stuff works. It really confirms what we knew, but without witnesses actually showing up and saying, yeah, it's true, or yeah, it works this way, or no, it really doesn't, we don't know. We just make a lot of noise ourselves. So appreciate your noise making, and we can watch you on a daily basis with permanent archives through YouTube, right?
Absolutely. You can go to youtube.com/The Young Turks or just come to our website at theyoungturks.com. And as you point out, I'm proud to be a progressive, and I'm proud to be what Fox News derisively calls secular humanist. Yes, I'm actually in favor of human beings.
Or secular humanist pronounced shh, which is what they'd like. Shh.
Right.
Acronyms.
Thank you so much, Cenk Uygur. We will talk to you later, and very much appreciate your coming on today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Harrison. Great to see you again.
Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to be talking to Simone Martinsen, and Simone is Norwegian, and he's going to give us a little insight on the Norwegian culture and how it all works. But first, it's time to get off our large curd cottage cheese fannies and into action. It's time for Activism A Go-Go.
Excite your liberal might. Speak loudly and carry a big stick. It's time for Activism A Go-Go. Oh, yeah!
If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier.
1, 2, 3. Activism A Go-Go.
Is there a rift in your life that has never been healed? Are you estranged from your family, friends, or loved ones? Do you have deep emotional wounds, personal conflicts, unforgivable actions, fuel divisions in your life, causing you pain? Let's see a show of hands. Look at that, the whole room. Woohoo! All right, if you're ready and willing to find forgiveness and start the healing process, get this, the executive producer of the acclaimed documentary series Intervention has partnered on a transformational new television show with counselor Butch Slaughter, that's his real name, and he wrote the book called Dear Daddy, I Hate You, Letters to My Mother's Killer. Now, as a child, Slaughter witnessed the murder of his mother at the hands of his own father, and after 33 years, this guy was able to find forgiveness, reconcile with his father, and now he wants to help our KPFK listeners find some peace. If you've had no way to reconnect with people, don't know how to find them, want to make amends, want to reconcile, the executive producer of the Bravo series, is making himself available for our listeners only right here to do this TV show. So, yeah, obviously you're going to be on TV, but they're going to help you get this done. It's a weekly 1-hour documentary series about reconciliation, and it's not about, like, following drunken celebrities around. It's real people.
Well, I'm
really
not watching that.
I know. It doesn't have that kind of interest. So if you're interested in this, in applying, you can send an email at reconnections@grbtv.com. Reconnections@grubtv.com, grbt.com. And just tell them a little bit about yourself, the person with whom you'd like to reconcile, why you're estranged, and why you'd like to reconcile now. Throw in your phone number as well as the city and state where you live, and attach 2 JPEGs of yourself. Fancy ones, if you can. I threw that in. They really would like to help you out, and that's the plot of the play here. If you're one of the people looking for a job, one of the 300+ million with 9% unemployment, and really feeling stuck, one of your fellow listeners has stepped up to the plate. Many of us sit around and we go, how do we create a large healthcare plan? How do we create a structure, a superstructure where we can start to accommodate the rest of us? Well, one of your fellow listeners, Lance Charles, he's psychotic. He is, and all he wants to do is help other listeners find their way through hard times.
Crazy.
It is crazy, isn't it? Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But he's got a plan that he's putting together, and he wants a couple of people to help him out. He's putting together a team to help folks find work in this torpedoed economy. He's the whole earth builder, and what he does is try to greenify houses and make things more sustainable for everybody and teach them how to do it. And he's also a life agent and tries to help other people. And so he's looking to build this team. It's a life challenge, and he's looking for a couple of crazy folks to work with. If you are a little bit cuckoo, it's going to be a perfect fit. So all you got to do is give him a call. He's a passionate guy. He shows up for people. He gives the way you give, the way you support the station, the way you support your fellow listeners. Help him help you help others. And I'm not sure exactly what the full plan is here, but I had a nice long conversation with him, and he wants to create a team. And obviously, if people can get compensated, which I believe is the plot of the play, it's 100% given on there. You can give him a call at 818-266-3834, 818-266-3834, or you can go to Whole Earth Builder. Whole Earth Builder, just Google Whole Earth Builder, and you'll find Lance there, your fellow KPFK listener, who again is trying to put something together, help us get jobs, and create a new world, the world that you envision. So that's 818-266-3834. And finally, as always, on every Friday, you can go to Ventura Boulevard, right around Laurel Canyon, and there is a further demonstration against the war. If the debt ceiling does get resolved and the Super Congress decides to do nothing, get this, $600 billion with a B, $600 billion with a B disappears from the Pentagon. How do you like that? $600 billion. So let's hope nobody shows up.
Right spot.
And we can certainly resolve that. It's very hard to pay contractors. You know, if you're one day late, you can kiss the Army goodbye. Why? Because an Army works on its stomach. And when they're hungry and you're not feeding them, they'll go get a tan instead.
Well, unfortunately, be sure that those cuts are first going to come out of caring for wounded warriors, etc.
Very good.
So we hope that this resolves itself in a more positive way.
Very good.
But that would be a silver lining.
And that's your Activism A Go-Go for Monday, August 1st, 2011,
Woo!
Here on Go Harrison.
This is Harrison.
All righty, it is 47 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. You are listening to KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. And I want to introduce a Norwegian. He has come here on holiday pretty much. I believe you're here on holiday. We're going to find out why exactly you're here, but I believe that's it. His name is Simone. I'm going to ask you to move in your chair just a little there.
Perfect.
That's it. He's have you ever been on camera before?
I've been on camera, but never on the radio.
Aha!
Oh,
well,
yay.
It's okay. We'll be gentle here. His name is Simone Martinson. He's a Norwegian citizen. And Simone, we've been all just endlessly nonstop dealing with what went on in Norway. We can't seem to understand it, yet we have our own Columbines, every other month here in the United States, but we're shocked and awed that such a thing would happen in Norway, probably because the thinking is that you Scandinavians are highly civilized, that you wouldn't. But your cops don't carry guns. Hence, they were late showing up because they had to go get guns, right?
Basically, yes.
So, give us the quick upload. Why would such a thing happen in a place that seems so open, so embracing?
Well, I think the big reason it happened is because a lot of people are immigrating to Norway, and some Norwegians. Norway is a pretty homogenous country. It's full of Norwegians. It's like United
Really?
States is a melting pot of ethnicities, but Norway it's pretty pure. And some people wanted to keep that way and are not open to change. And because they're not open to change, they demonstrate that through violent actions.
And one of the things about Norway that makes it different from the United States, for instance, let's take Zach Middleton, who's sitting back there, who's helping us out on the show. And thank you so much for being here, Zach. Let's say Zach chucks his passport, throws away any written history of himself, jumps on an airplane, flies to Norway and says, I'm here, and they're coming after me, and I want asylum. He suddenly gets access to full medical, right? He gets an education in Norway. His life is full and rich comparatively, especially if your unemployment is so hideous in America. We could just all go to Norway, and it really would be an upgrade, wouldn't it?
Well, it depends. If you like it here in California, then maybe you wouldn't like the weather.
That's right. The weather sucks, but you get an education, you get health care, right, and you get a nice house. So a lot of people come into Norway. Suddenly your population is being glutted. Your homogenous, white guy population is starting to have a different blend of people in there. And it seems to be nonstop because the laws haven't changed to stop the incursion. So guys like this get crazy, right? The way the Tea Party gets crazy here and wants to build electrified walls with Gatling guns and start mowing down Mexicans.
Sure, but I really don't think that's a solution to anything. I think the goal should just be to. Honestly, I don't think anything really does need to change in terms of those laws. There's only 4.5 million people living in Norway anyway, so having a few more, I don't think that's really gonna hurt.
See, this is really cool. And so the response of Norway is to expand democracy and not do a Patriot Act here and close down democracy and close down society. Your thing is open it up even more. What's the thinking behind that, do you think?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think Norwegians pride themselves on being hospitable and accommodating, and there's people who are definitely against having immigrants, and some of the views of having immigrants come into the country are, not everybody likes that, just like they don't like it here. But I don't think the solution is to go around killing anybody. Definitely not.
And obviously, most of the people who espouse that belief aren't going around killing people. Even those who don't want immigration in your country. All right, this was one aberrant act by one ostensibly crazy guy.
Sure, and I think that if you're against that, then you can express that in the next election. I think that's the
civilized thing to do.
It's a civilized thing to do.
Now, here's a good question, because we're all going, what? The Norwegian police don't carry guns? Why, that's un-American.
Well, actually, kind of an interesting story, and I didn't realize it until very recently, actually till these attacks, is growing up in Norway, the first time I actually saw a gun in person, besides television, was I was about 11 years old, and I was leaving the country. I think it was in Abu Dhabi. That was the first time I saw. So I was 11 before I actually saw a gun. Wow. So it's understandable that whenever something like this happens, the police are not going to be armed and ready. They'll hit you with a baton, maybe.
Because there's no necessity for them to carry the guns.
There's not.
Right.
There's not really any necessity. I don't really see the point of having a gun. Nobody has a gun. It's difficult to get a gun there. The only people who get access to guns and weapons are hunters.
Well, how do you shoot each other if you don't have a gun then?
Makes it difficult. It's pretty difficult.
I guess that's the idea, right?
That's the idea.
Right. I mean, the British famously never walked around with guns. The cops, the constables, the constabulary, they walked around with nightsticks and such, and now they have guns, right? Because after they and the U.S. invaded Iraq, they started carrying guns because the terrorists.
Well, after I heard about the attacks, my first reaction, of course, was sadness for everybody passing away, but also I felt fear that maybe the country would change, and I was very glad to see the Prime Minister really say we need more democracy and more openness, because I don't think carrying guns is definitely not a solution, and also don't think the solution is to act out of paranoia to the attacks.
We're talking to Simon Martinsen. He is from Norway. He's here on business and other things, and got a chance to talk to him about what's going on in Norway, and he's sharing with you a bit of their cultural thinking and why stuff goes the way it goes, and why it was, a triple shock to them, whereas here it's fairly the new normal that it's horrifying, endlessly horrifying here, but it's not like I really can't believe it. Children take guns to school because they take them now, they say, to defend themselves, right? But in a society where it doesn't occur to you first to walk around with a weapon, you're probably not as inclined to use it. So it really is throwing hand grenade in a bowl of soup in your country. Simone, one of the things that you're doing here in the U.S. is, because of such rampant unemployment and all of that, you're creating a system where really anybody with a small business or whatever can find a way to get online, as opposed to the old-fashioned way for like $10 or $12. And you came up with another one of these typical internet-sounding things called Plebu.
Yep, Plebu. It's a very simple... actually, before we can get started on Plebu, you brought up a great point earlier about unemployment. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to kind of scope out the land, to see if I can find the research, developers for and mostly graphic designers. And I think this is a great place. And now I've been kind of wooed by the weather, which is another reason to maybe move the company here and create some jobs here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, now a lot of people internationally are coming to Los Angeles, coming to the United States, because with a compressed economy, the value of your money to move here, it's a lot cheaper for you to do that, whereas it's cheaper for U.S. businesses, large corporations, to go get slave labor in China or Mexico or other places. For you, a European, to come here, it's cheaper for you to do business here in our compressed economy. So in many ways, who knows how it shakes out. Again, we have to find out, will we have a civil society? Because if the Tea Party has its way, it's dirt floors and marble floors only. Do you have a concern about that as a European, dirt floors and marble floors in the U.S.?
Well, absolutely doesn't sound right. Absolutely not.
Well, thank you for that. I vote yes on your take on that. We're talking to Simon Martinsen. He's a Norwegian citizen, and he's here in Los Angeles visiting and offering some perspective on his culture and why things work that way at 55 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you. You're listening to Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. Do we have a little live and local traffic with Jeff Thomas? I believe we do. Put the key in the ignition, turn it to the right, and go, baby, go!
Go Harrison. Completely unsponsored, common sense commuter traffic.
It is 55 minutes past the hour. This is your Go Harrison live and local traffic report on KPFK. Let's start in Culver City on the 405 South, just before Jefferson Boulevard. A car is blocking the left lane. That is a crash. Traffic is backed up to Venice Boulevard. The 110 North is still slow from Adams to the 5, and on the 5 in La Mirada, the northbound lanes are still slow from Valley View to the 605, and again from Atlantic to the 110. The 710 is still a better alternate as you head into downtown. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, keyword Go Harrison. For Harrison, I'm Jeffrey Thomas on KPFK 90.7 FM Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara.
This is Harrison.
Thank you, Jefferson. That's an homage to Thomas, of course.
Nice.
It is 57 past the hour. We've got about 1 minute, Simone. So tell us, you want to bring a business here and create jobs, creating an online experience for like $10 or something for the average American suffering.
All right, so the name of the company is Plebu, so it's plebu.com, and what it is it's an insanely easy website builder. So this is not meant to replace your graphic designer or your web designer. Really what it is, it's just so ordinary people who don't have that, the same budgets to go out and hire a designer, they can build a beautiful, simple, app-like website in minutes. It's intuitive. You don't need to know any coding or anything like that. It just works, and it looks beautiful, and it's really going to help your brand.
And it's not out yet, but it will be soon?
It's going to be out next week. We're launching next
week.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. And we love the Scandinavian thinking, as always, right? It's minimal.
Actually,
it's cheap. And
my thinking was I wanted to create a website builder that is the IKEA of website builders. You assemble it yourself. We give you simple instructions. We don't actually. The goal is to have the user experience be so simple. It's very intuitive.
Awesome.
But
Well, we'll catch up with you later on that. Thank you for giving us a cool little rescue in a time where we all need it. Harrison with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can catch archives of this online at goharrison.com or kpfk.org. And we will look forward to seeing you next week. And next week, by the way, is the 1-year anniversary of Mercy Malik being here on the show.
That's right.
Happy birthday, Mercy.
Thank you.
And as always, we love you all, and we hope you have a wonderful week. Again, more will be revealed. Quite clearly, the top story right now is the debt ceiling. What does that mean? You know, under Ronald Reagan, it was raised, 18 times. Under Bush, another 7, about 100 times in the last number of years. Not a big deal. But if at the end of the game, you simply want to privatize Earth, and remember, the United States, for the tapped market that it is, still has some assets left, and now's a good time just to transfer the rest of the last 8.3 cents up to the very top. And how does that work? We're going to get into that, but first, let me just point out a programming note. Coming up in about a half hour, we're going to be talking to a man named Simone Martinsen. He's from Norway, and he's going to talk about some of the psychology of what goes on there. We tend now to imagine there is rampant xenophobia. There really isn't, and one of the reasons the cops showed up so late at the scene of the crime was because they simply don't carry guns. They don't believe in shooting each other. They don't believe in shooting the citizenry, so it took them a lot longer to go fetch guns to show up at the crime. How does that all work from his perspective? So that's coming up in about a half hour. But without further ado, I want to reintroduce a man who really needs no introduction. I speak in cliches because they really fit sometimes. You need no introduction. Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks. Welcome to Go Harrison.
Great to be here, and it's great to talk to you. We're old friends. It's been a long time.
I owe you a great thank you.
Not outsiders, we're insiders, and this is the establishment, and the message that I got loud and clear was start acting like it, which is to not question the establishment. I had absolutely no intent of doing that, so I continued my program exactly as I was doing it before. And in fact, in April, May, and June, I had my best ratings ever. Every month it got better, and we beat MSNBC from 6 o'clock last year, which they were incredibly happy about because Ed Schultz, who had that
Fox,
beating
CNN,
beating CNN by a long shot, even beat Fox the week before I got the message in 18-34, which is very, very rare for MSNBC.
Well, and I would think that would be a tone that would concern them in the right ways. Like, look, it's working. Look, it's winning. Look, he's speaking the voice of the people. That perhaps is the right tone. But at the end of the day, the corporate master, General Electric, the largest weapons contractor on Earth, 104 nuclear power plants in U.S. soil, many of the beautiful components that broke down in Fukushima are General Electric made. I remember doing a story 10 years ago on how they would rate a switch at a nuclear power plant to last 5 years, and after 5 years you simply re-rate it, and now it's a 15-year switch as the Bakelite cracks apart and the old stuff that pre-plastic starts to chip away, but that's okay. And when you get close to that, when you start to massage the nubbins and sand the osteophytes of BS, for many things, not only for you standing up for the humans on our little rotating orb here, for as many years as you have had to do, and for all the discomfort that you've been willing to bear over time. It's not easy trying to tell the truth because some people don't like that.
As it turns out.
Your tone, right? That's what we're looking. So tell us what happened. Here you were on every day on MSNBC. We all got to watch you. And then, poof, we get the Reverend Al Sharpton. We're now putting on a preacher. Let's just call it what it is. He's a cleric. No matter what we think of his, we've now put on a preacher. So what happened?
Well, I'm going to leave the Al Sharpton stuff aside because one could argue if he's a cleric, but that's a whole other issue. All right, and one can argue if that's a good or a bad thing. So, well, you know, I was on MSNBC for some time, as you mentioned, and about 3 months ago in April, they pulled me in and said, hey, Cenk, as you're hosting the 6 o'clock show here for us, we've gotten some people in Washington who are saying they are uncomfortable with your tone. They are concerned with your tone. And, you know, the president of MSNBC said, you know, we'd love to be outsiders. They're cool. They wear leather jackets. They ride motorcycles, which I didn't realize was the case. I've never ridden a motorcycle.
That's a deal maker. I have a scooter.
Maybe that was the problem.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the only cycle I've ridden is a bicycle. That was, my old Schwinn, I believe it was,
that was
from
the
a long
tone.
time ago.
That was the tone that was concerning them.
Right. And he said, but we're not.
Live from Hollywood is Harrison.
We sure are in LA. 4 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. Welcome and happy Monday for those of you for whom there's happiness. More will be revealed as the adult supervision in the halls of Congress on Capitol Hill decide whether or not to pull off the practical joke, the hoodwinkery, the pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, the real plot of the play, and the pot that is being smoked. And we're going to get into what the real plot of the play is here today on Go Harrison. We're also going to have a wonderful conversation with a man who is totally familiar to you, has been for many years, at least 10 years, one of the pioneers of progressive talk, to be sure, one of the originators of progressive talk on satellite radio all the way into a truly hit online TV show called the Young Turks. Oh, did I spill the beans? Yes. And then, of course, a major voice on Msnbc for quite a long time. He's stepped away from that right now, or they've stepped away from him, or they've mutually stepped apart from each other. We're going to find out what we're probably going to confirm what you probably thought about corporate media at large and just how far the threshold of credibility, of truth-telling, of being prickly and pushing the man behind the curtain out from behind the curtain, how long you can get away with that. And people do tend to kick back.
And I did stories on that. Not just the GE parts in the plants, which is a good story, but we also touched on how GE does not pay corporate taxes and how they do tax avoidance. I also talked about net neutrality and how Comcast was on the wrong side of that.
Comcast that owns MSNBC, by the way.
That's right.
That would be the Comcast.
Yes, that Comcast.
Yes.
So, as I recount those stories, you begin to understand why we parted ways. So, look, for those of you in your audience who don't know the full story, then they came to me and said, look, you did great, but we're not going to give you 6 o'clock. I took that to mean, hey, I didn't play ball. And they gave me a very lucrative offer for the weekends and for also for a contributor role. And I said, no, thank you. I don't want to do this, right? Because I sense that I obviously couldn't tell this story if I stayed internal at MSNBC. And I think people need to know what you're getting when you turn on television, right? And when you turn on the mainstream media. They have a lot of factors, whether it's corporate factors, political factors. They take access into account, want to keep the politicians happy, so they keep coming back on their shows. You got to know that. So what you're getting is not necessarily geared towards the audience. It's geared towards power. And so be wary of what you're watching and what you're listening.
11 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. You are watching Go Harrison through GoHarrison.com. We're streaming live on Ustream. It will be available tomorrow throughout DirecTV and Dish networks as well. You can also listen